the beautiful part of this is every instance in your life is a learning lesson. So no
Mhm.
matter what I've been doing in the past, this is an amazing period of time I've went through to make me be able to have this change in my life.
Welcome, everybody, to the Culture and Legacy podcast, where we are having conversations with entrepreneurs about life behind the scenes. My name is Matthew, and I'm the host of this podcast. And today, I'm excited to have Maggie Fleming on here with me today. Maggie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me. And so, for people who don't know Maggie, who don't know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I am a health and wellness enthusiast and a personal development junkie here in Austin, Texas. I'm
ATX.
obsessed with it. Yeah, Austin's an amazing city, and I'm just doing my best to inspire others with what I have to share. And I'm a life coach who helps people get on this path to passion and fulfillment.
Cool. Very cool. So, how did you, what was kind of your journey? I feel like health coach, to be at a place where, you're about health and wellness, and specifically to be a health coach, or let me say specifically to be a life coach, it's one thing is to just give yourself the title, but another thing is, I've lived a life where I've, gone through some stuff, and maybe you had your own life coach and you're like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to change. I want to impact people like that. How did you get to this point?
Yeah, so growing up, I was never that person who was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. How do
Mm-hmm.
I figure this out? For the first like 18 years of my life, I knew I was gonna be a professional dancer. Like
Oh, cool.
that's what I poured all of my effort and energy into. And that led me to a path of thinking like, hey, I don't know if this is right for me anymore. Like,
Mm.
this has been amazing lessons and it's been great to do this. But I found myself at a point in my journey where that no longer served me. So I had to do some self reflection and understand why I didn't want to do that anymore and put myself on a path of doing something I liked. So that led me to a place where it was kind of confusing and I was feeling misled and lost in the world because I had spent all of my life focusing on this one thing that
Yeah.
ended up
Wow.
not being what I actually wanted. So I was lost. And
Mm.
that was a really deep, dark place for me. And I didn't know who I was. And that was so hard for me because that then led me to a path of grasping for happiness wherever I could find it because I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. And I was just, it was debilitating. So that was really very, very hard. And from there, it was like a moment of, dude, you need to change something. This is not fun.
Yeah.
You are not
Some
happy.
needs to
Like, get your
change.
shit together. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Something needs to change.
Mm.
And from there, I realized that nobody's going to do this for me. Nobody can find what makes me happy. So I knew that it was time to start doing that deep dive into my life and who I am. And from there, I just realized that self development is a catalyst to anything you want to do in your life. And I became obsessed,
Wow.
just incredibly obsessed. And that's kind of where I found my path.
Cool. Very cool. Wow. That seems like that's like a whole life lesson packed in, just a few years to get you to this place. And so I guess, growing up and, you wanted to be a dancer, and then, I know I was an athlete growing up, in high school and in college. And so I know that mental and physical discipline that's needed to compete and to be successful in that field. And so I can't imagine as a dancer, it's similar, if not even more, because your whole life it goes into that. And so can you tell me about the moment of like, this is like, you made it, right? Like you reached your dream of being a dancer before you realized that like, oh, this may not be what I want to do. Like, it's just that moment when you got there. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so my story is pretty interesting because at I mean, I had known all along that I wanted this. So the minute I could, I got out of my parents' house and I got out on my own. I was living in a small town in Kansas out of everywhere. The population was 5,000 people. And I graduated high school early so I could go and pursue my dream. So I left
Hmm.
that small town and I moved to LA at 17 by myself, which
Wow.
is population 4 million.
Yeah, big jump from small town Kansas.
Definitely a culture shock. So I did that. And whenever I got there, I was like, I'm doing something big and I have no clue how this is going to turn out, but at least I'm doing something, right? Like, we're
Hmm.
going to try this.
Yeah.
And from there, it was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I remember the exact catalyst. And it was just, I was, I was there for 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, I was practicing in my room. And I recognized that the past 2 years hadn't been full of happiness. That had been full of kind of reaching from validation and trying to find the acceptance that I didn't give myself. And I was recognizing that, but I never let myself fully comprehend that or fully think about that because that's painful. It's
Hmm.
painful to think like I'm not happy, right?
Yeah. After you've dedicated, years to get to this place, thinking that this would bring you happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I remember practicing and just sitting down defeated, like, this doesn't bring me happiness. I need to change something, but what the hell do I do?
Hmm.
So that was the moment where I was just like, listen, this is cool, but I need to change now.
Yeah. Wow. So how did that feel? I guess the moment of like, so I'm thinking of people who are listening or are watching, and they may be in this place right now where they're like, I've dedicated years or decades into, getting to this place, like hitting the goal that I had set for myself, just to get there, to realize that this isn't all great, whether they're making, a lot of money, but then they're not happy, or maybe, they're just there, they reach there and then they figure out that they are lonely, they're alone. And I'm sure you may
Mhm.
have uh dealt with similar things, because you moved to LA at 17 and spent 2 years there, not knowing anybody, potentially. And so I'm just thinking of, those people who we can relate to. what what was that, I guess, emotionally and mentally, that moment of like, this is not working, I need to do something different? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so that was really hard because I wasn't used to being honest with myself. And I wasn't used to having to call myself out almost and realize the truth of what's happening in the reality. It was very emotionally draining and kind of debilitating because I had I mean, we just were talking about this, but I had spent my whole life into it. So it was the moment of like, okay, the beautiful part of this is every instance in your life is a learning lesson. So no
Hmm.
matter what I've been doing in the past, this is an amazing period of time I've went through to make me be able to have this change in my life. So it's beautiful that I've done all of this. And the change is just becoming honest with yourself. And once you recognize that you need change, being in that uncomfortable spot is so essential. Being able to ask yourself the questions like, what do I need? And how do I feel about this is just life changing because you finally get that moment of, wow, I've been lying to myself. And now, emotionally and mentally, it's time to step up. It's time to be honest and get to the point where I know I need to be and find myself after being lost for so long.
Wow. That's interesting, because a lot. I think, even me thinking, I'm like, man, like, I feel like a cliche phrase is to say, life is a journey, and it really is. But in the journey of in the aspect of like, you may have reached a point that you felt like this is where I need to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end. Like that's the stepping point where it's like, okay, I've made it here. Now what's next? And I think a lot of people stop at I've made it here, and then they sit there, right? They get comfortable and don't want to go any further. They don't want to grow anymore because they feel like this is it. And so I think something that's big that you did was like, okay, I've made it here. I thought that this was going to be it, but maybe I'm just putting words into your mouth, but like instead of like, I've made it, this isn't it, now I'm doomed, but it's like, okay, I've made it. Now I need to wake up, get over myself, and figure out what's going to be next,
No,
right?
you're so right. That's a beautiful way to put it. I agree. And I think that many of us are on autopilot for so long, going towards something that we think we should do that ought to bring us happiness. We don't take a step back and reevaluate and get self aware enough to say to ourselves, this is not actually going to bring me to happiness. This is going to take me off of the path of fulfillment. And we just keep going and we don't take that step back because we don't know how. And I think the most important part of that is just developing self-awareness to whenever you start going down that road, you can mentally and emotionally catch yourself and say, whoa, I'm doing it again. Let me get
Hmm.
in alignment with myself and let me rethink what I'm doing and just slow down. And that's what I think is so beautiful right now while we're recording. We're in the midst of coronavirus, right? And I think that's what's so beautiful about this time is that everybody's having to put pause on their autopilot and take a step back and reevaluate because it gives us so much time to just think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. I was actually having a conversation with this last night with my mentor because I've been kind of in this funk of like, man, I'm just not feeling creative, and it's, without feeling creative, I feel like I'm just not doing anything that's worthwhile. And he just reminded me of, life life is in seasons, and just because you are a creative person, or you're a business person, whatever, this may just not be your season to be creative. Maybe this is the season to focus on you, because if you don't know who you are, then you can't then you're not creating anything that's full of purpose, that's full of life. And if we're not doing these things that are bringing us purpose or giving us life, then we're doing a disservice to ourselves and other people. And so I think that's a good point of, you know, there is some self-development that we need to realize, but also just some self-awareness on like, just because at this moment I'm not feeling happy or full of purpose doesn't mean that I'm worthless.
Hmm.
You brought up this time that we're in now with coronavirus, and a lot of people are unable to do the things that have given them life and purpose. And so they have to sit and think about themselves, and they're like, oh man,
Hmm.
I'm nothing without my job, or oh man, I'm nothing without, you know, my physical community, or these things. And people are having to either forced to cope with it, or forced to change and adapt.
Yeah.
And I think in your life journey, you realize I need to change and adapt, right?
Yeah.
That's big.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that a lot of people are realizing that, and I think that's so beautiful. I think these unprecedented times are such a gift. We needed it and the earth needed it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Okay, so you're in this place. You're, I guess, for a lack of better words, you were in a funk, just in a hole, and you realize, okay, I got to get out. Um, Eventually you did get out. We kind of touched on the journey of like, realizing that you need to go. What was, because I'm sure this was a very nerve-wracking process of like getting out and then getting to where you were. Can you talk about, I guess, just that growth phase?
Yeah, like the growth phase leading up to what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I was still living in LA and I was realizing that all of this was happening, I I knew I wasn't happy, so I needed to change something. And what I did was I started traveling a lot because, I mean, obviously, who doesn't get enjoyment out of traveling? And
Yeah.
so I just went to a bunch of different places. And at the time, I had an apartment by myself in LA, and it's super expensive in LA, which ended up being a great blessing because whenever I was traveling, I was losing money on rent. And what I ended up doing was I put my apartment on Airbnb while I was traveling. And from that moment, I realized how lucrative the short term rental market is and real estate is. And long story short, I found myself thinking, like, hey, if I don't have anything else to do, real estate is great passive income, and real estate is always going to be there for me whenever I want passive income and developing financial freedom. And I have always been this little aspiring entrepreneur since I was like 7.
Hmm.
And so I've always been interested in finance and finding something to where I don't have to work for anybody. So finding that and doing kind of Airbnb arbitrage, from LA, I went to Kansas and did it, and I went to Austin and did it. I was learning more and more about real estate, and I was transitioning into passive income through long term rental instead of short term rental, like buying a property and renting it so you don't have to do anything and it's pretty passive. Well, through that, I was reading and I was getting more knowledge on real estate, and it took me into realizing that the amount of money that you make is directly codependent on the value that you bring to the marketplace. And
Wow.
the value that you bring to the marketplace is entirely codependent on your mindset as a person.
Hmm. Wow. Wow.
And that's what got me into self development. That's what kind of forged my path to where at first it was like, if I want to make money and become rich, I got to fix this thing up here first.
Yeah, yeah, that's big. So it's kind of like, if I get my mind right, then I and learning myself, and then I learn the kind of value that I need to bring and want to bring that people desire. And if I'm bringing that kind of value, depending on the type of business you're in, it's going to reflect on your wallet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Hmm. And so then getting into, so a lot of people sit and stay in just real estate, and for you, I guess it wasn't enough. You wanted to do more, I guess. You know, this journey of, empty and broken to, I guess, successful. How did all that even transition to now being a life coach?
Yeah. So at first, I was really proud of myself for figuring out something else to do, and I liked it. But the more that I was in it, I was realizing, like, I don't wake up in the morning and I'm not enthusiastic to do what I'm going to do the entire day. So figuring out that, like, yeah, this is cool and it's always going to be here for me personally, it did not make me enthusiastic to wake up every morning. And I was just realizing, like, damn, we spend 75%, or for entrepreneurs probably more than 75%, doing our career. So if I want true fulfillment, I need to figure out what the hell I like and what the hell I'm good at and how to make that a career. And real estate is awesome, but it's just not enough to fulfill my heart and my soul. So from there, it was a transition of like, all right, I need to figure out what I like. I need to figure out who I am. I need to figure out what makes me cry. What makes me cry? I'm so passionate about it.
Hmm.
And the more I was still doing work on myself and figuring out who I was going to seminars like Tony Robbins seminars and spending all this money on personal development and education. And I was realizing, like, oh my God, this stuff is life changing. I am obsessed with this stuff. So I was like, why not make this a career? Like there's a ton of people who make a career out of personal development. Let me just do that. And it was really cool to figure out that that's the one thing that I absolutely love, because then there's so many ways to do that. I started realizing I've always been this kind of person that wants to help people genuinely figure out whatever it is they're trying to do with their mindset or their goals. And I've always been this person that people naturally come to for advice. So was thinking to myself, if I love personal development and I love helping people, and it's my goal to make a difference in the world through helping people realize their true worthiness, then I need to be a coach. I need to be getting my message out. I need to be inspiring the world.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. And so do you feel like you have found your purpose?
I definitely found like, I definitely feel like I have found my purpose. And I also think that that word is subjective, because I think purpose definitely evolves over time. And I think that's totally fine. I think for now, what I'm meant to be doing is I'm meant to be spreading my word and learning as much as I can to be an amazing coach and developing into what I'm meant to do for the world. And I think right now that this is definitely it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way of seeing it. Purpose it can change.
Yeah.
We may find your purpose for today, for now, in this place that you're at now, and then tomorrow it can be different. Especially
Yeah.
because, you know, something that you've illustrated so well is, you know, a lot of these things are tied to our mindset. And so if our mindset is and should be constantly changing, then our purpose is changing along with that. And then that's also going to be affecting the value that we're bringing to people. Because ultimately, a lot of people, that's what we want to do, is we want people to know the good that we are putting into the world, or the desires of our heart for what we want to put out. And so uh, when our when that is constantly evolving, because, you know, there's no way, you know, 17-year-old Maggie had an idea of what, you know, today's Maggie would be doing in the world, because, you know, your mindset was set on, I'm going to dance, like that's it. And if anything, it was, you know, I'll even speak for myself, so I'm not just calling you out. You know, teenage me, you know, the thing that I wanted was just about me, right?
Mhm.
You know, very selfish. And so now, you know, years later, things that I want to do is about other people, and helping them share their message, and helping them find their purpose, and connect, or their purpose for now, and then connecting with people who see that. And so that's such a, you know, beautiful thing, that it's something that changes, and it's not a bad thing, right? Like, it's change can be good. Change is growth as well. And I'm just, now I'm rambling now and just taking your spotlight, but you know, I'm just processing this as you're sharing. It's like, man, like, a lot of people strive for purpose, but purpose isn't a destination. Purpose is a part of the journey,
Yeah.
and that's such a
That's a
good thing.
beautiful way to put it. That's so true.
Yeah, that's so cool. Um, so Maggie, so as a life coach now, and even in the journey of being a life coach, what do you feel like are some common things or common hindrances that you see in people, that it's blocking them from getting onto the journey that they need to get on?
That's a really good question. So people who usually seek out a life coach are typically very aspirational and they have big goals. So a lot of times people with that personality type fall into this vicious cycle of wanting perfection and wanting having extremely high expectations for themselves. And that vicious cycle often looks like I'm not disciplined. And with high achievers and with people who are driven, that's typically not the case. Typically, that's all in their head because they expect so much out of themselves. And I've noticed this with myself too. It's very typical to fall into the cycle of, oh, I have an expectation of myself to get 100% better instantaneously. So you try to live up to that, and then you obviously are not going to become 100% better instantaneously. So you lose faith in yourself. And then the next time you try to be disciplined or reach a certain level, you're going to look back and there's going to be a voice in the back of your head saying, last time you fucked up, you're not going to do it, just give up. And it's because of those high standards. So then
Mm-hmm.
we don't live up to the expectations, and then we come down on ourselves even harder, and then we still don't get to that, and it's just repeatable over and over and over. And those types of people need to break this cycle if they want to get to where they're going, because if they don't, they aren't recognizing their true worth, and that's really what stops a lot of people from achieving what they want and finding true fulfillment.
Wow. People are their own hindrances.
Yeah.
I think, there's a saying that says that, you're your own worst enemy, but I feel like that's such a negative connotation, because it's not that you're your own worst enemy. You're just the one that's holding yourself back from being the hero that you need yourself to be, and the hero that other
Yeah.
people need you to be. You're not the enemy. You're just um you're just on the journey. And like you said, you've set your own expectation, you've set your own goals, whether it's realistic or unrealistic. And there's just something in you that has to change or has to grow, to be that hero that you and the world needs.
Yeah.
You're not your own enemy. You're just not realizing that you are your own hero.
Yeah, you just need a little bit of tweaks to get there and a little bit of changes, because the person that you are is enough. The person
Wow.
that you are is perfect.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. Sometimes you need a little nudging.
Yeah, you
but
do.
but there's nothing wrong with the life journey that you are on. It's your life journey is different from mine, is different from my wife, is different from anybody who's listening or watching. Everybody's life journey is different. And so this even gets us into the topic of like comparison, on how comparing yourself to other people, um if anything, that's your worst enemy.
Yeah,
uh, you
that's so
know,
true.
yeah, you trying to, because now you're trying to be somebody else. You're trying to live to the standard that somebody else has set for themselves, which is unrealistic for me, because I can't do that, because they've gone through the journey and they found their purpose for the place where they are. My purpose isn't their purpose. And that's something that harms a lot of people, is when I don't know me, when Matthew doesn't know Matthew, he's going to look for somebody else who is where I think that I want to be. And then now I'm even further away from who I need to be.
Yeah,
Right.
and it kind of hinders you. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really because our human default is to be negative. So if we can switch our human default and our thinking to a more positive and grateful default, then our fulfillment level is just going to skyrocket.
Yeah. Yeah. That's big. That's good. You said that human, or our default is to be negative. That's a good thing. I think that's true. And a lot of people are walking around. I think it's just, my mind is just all over the place. I recently had a mental health professional on the podcast, and one of the things that we talked about was just how these, like, it's, I think the point that I made is, these things are inevitable. Like, we're going to deal at some point in our life with some sort of anxiety, some sort of depression, some sort of mental health problem.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because we put so much pressure on ourselves. And um, maybe human nature is to be a little bit more pessimistic and a little bit more
Yeah.
negative, that we sit in that and we think, man, I'm worthless. I am good for nothing. I'm not going to succeed. But that's not necessarily the case. As you have shared through your story, is, you were in that spot, but your remedy was, I just got to change my environment, or I need to change the thing that I'm doing, because if you as a dancer, or if, whatever you feel like you're doing, even if you have somebody who's listening or watching has a successful and thriving business, but you're still feeling worthless, then maybe that thing isn't what you need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree.
Yeah. And I think, as you've said, is people, that's a hard thing to acknowledge, that, accept it, and then go and move or go and
Yeah.
change.
It's uncomfortable. None of
It
us
is.
like to be wrong. So to
Mm-hmm.
be wrong is extremely humiliating. And if we can just see that to be wrong is not a bad thing, it's actually super helpful, then our whole mindset just gets flipped upside down.
Yeah. Wow. That's so big. That's so good. Maggie, this was such a good conversation. I think, you know, coming into this, like, it's such a timely message because, like I said earlier, I am, with all this Corona stuff, like, work isn't the same, and, just life isn't the same, but
Mhm.
it's not an excuse or a reason for us to feel like we are also, worthless and have no purpose. This is an opportunity to find our self-worth and to find our purpose for now. We are responsible for our own actions and our own, the place that we're at. And of course, every story and every scenario situation is different, but at some point, we need to take ownership of ourselves. And something my wife always says is, life is too short to not do what makes us happy. And I
Oh,
think if we're
yeah.
not doing that, then we need to chase and find that thing that does make us happy.
Your wife is a smart woman.
She is. Very much. Yeah. So Maggie, why don't you tell us, for actually, before I ask people to, or ask you to share about yourself, there's one question that I always ask everybody that comes on here. So this is the Culture and Legacy podcast. And so a question I want to ask you is, what is the legacy that you want to leave?
That's such a good question. I think that's such an important question. And the legacy that I want to leave is realizing or helping people realize their true worth and their true potential to help the world and to contribute on a big scale, and help them understand that no matter who they are, they have so many gifts to share. And that's what I want to help people realize.
Mm-hmm. Such a servant heart. Just really caring for, other people, and having gone through that, I think that's such a identifiable place for the people that are coming across you and that are hearing you and your story. There's just so much value that you're going to bring to other people's life, and it's so cool to see that, and to see that grow, and other people. So for people who want to connect with you, or who want to see some of your work, or just reach out to you, and have you as a life coach, where can people find you and connect with you?
Thank you for that, by the way. That's really sweet. You can find me on Instagram. I think that's probably the best way to get in touch. And my Instagram is Maggie Fleming ATX. And then from there, all my links are on there to my website, Facebook, however else you'd like to connect. And please, to all the listeners, please don't ever hesitate to reach out and ask questions and ask advice. I'm always more than willing to help out in any way that I can. So
Cool. Very cool. And I know that you have, you have an offer for people who do reach out to you, for some coaching. Why don't you share what your offer is for people who are following and listening the Culture and Legacy podcast?
yeah, so for anyone that mentions that they listen to this podcast, I'm giving them $200 off a month coaching package.
Cool. Very cool. Take up that opportunity. That's this, this is the one. We have one life to live, and it's not enjoyable. It's not fun. It's not worth anything if we go day by day, stuck in a cycle and just, feeling like we just have no worth. That's not the life that we are intended to live. And
Yeah.
so if you're listening, if you're watching this podcast, connect with Maggie, mention that we sent you the Culture and Legacy podcast, and, change your life, experience growth. And, once you take care of yourself, then you're able to take care of other people, and your business can grow once you and your mindset is right and on a path of wellness. So Maggie, thank you so much for being on this podcast with me. And if you are listening or watching or following us, be sure to subscribe to the channel, follow us on our social media accounts, and just be a part of this conversation that we're having. We're all in this journey to grow and to experience purpose and life and leave a legacy. And so join us, interact. And for now, we're done. And so we'll see you all next time. Bye.